Hello students, this is Matrices part 1. This is one of 4 different parts for matrices and pretty important. So first, if you've never worked with matrices before, what a matrix is it's a rectangular arrangement of numbers in rows and columns. Okay, so a lot of you guys have probably seen a matrix at some point where these are what we call our rows, right? So here are your rows, and these are what are called your columns, okay? So when we look at it, each matrix has a bunch of elements. So if I say A, B, C, all of these are elements, which are the numbers, or they could be variables also in a matrix. Now, the dimensions of a matrix has to be in this order: the number of rows by the number of columns. So this X here basically represents the word by. So we say rows by columns. So if I look at this example here, or this matrix here, if I look, I have row 1, here's row 2, here's row 3, here's column 1, column 2, column 3, and then column 4. So columns are vertical, rows are horizontal. So when I go to write the dimensions of this matrix, you have 3 rows by 4 columns. Okay, so do me a favor, just based off of the definition of a matrix and that first example, try example 1, A, B, C, and D on your own, and then come back and check your answers. So this one here, if I look at it, there's row 1, row 2, column 1, column 2. So this is a 2 by 2 matrix. Okay, over here, if I look, I have row 1, row 2, row 3, then column 1, column 2. So this is a 3 by 2 matrix. Letter C. Right away when I look, here's row 1, row 2, row 3, and that's column 1. So that's a 3 by 1 matrix. And then over here we have row 1, row 2, and then you have column 1, 2, 3, 4. So this is a 2 by 4 matrix. Okay, so being able to determine the dimension of a matrix is important not only for today's lesson, but the next lesson also. So adding and subtracting matrices. So to add or subtract 2 matrices, you're basically adding or subtracting the elements in the corresponding positions, right? So if I look here, I have row 1, I have row 1, column 1. Here's row 1, column 1. These are corresponding elements, and if I go ahead and add them together, that would give me my new element. Okay, now there's one thing that you have to keep in mind when you add or subtract matrices. You can only add or subtract matrices if they have the same dimensions. Okay, so these are both 2 by 2, so we can add them. When we subtract matrices, one thing I like to do is change the subtraction to addition, and then just go in the other matrix that follows and change the signs. Okay, because when you subtract a positive, it becomes negative. If you subtract a negative, it becomes positive. And then you're going to do the same thing as up above. You're going to add or subtract the corresponding elements to get your new element. So let's take a look at the first example here, right? The dimensions of this is a 3 by 1. This is a 3 by 1. So if I go ahead and add them, what is 3 plus negative 1? That'll give me my first element, negative 3 plus 5, and then we have 5 plus 5. And if we go ahead and simplify those, my final answer would be 3 plus negative 1 is 2, negative 3 plus 5 is 2, 5 plus 5 is 10, and we are done. Okay, example 2. What am I doing with these 2 matrices? I am subtracting, so I'm going to change that to addition. Then I'm going to go and just change the signs of each element in this matrix, right? So now if I look at this, 4 plus negative 5 is negative 1. Then I get 0 plus 6 is 6. 5 plus 1 is 6. Negative 4 plus negative 6 is negative 10. Negative 2 plus 6 is 4. And then 3 plus 5 is 8. All right. So do me a favor, pause the video and do the 3 you try problems on your own, and then come back and check your answers. All right. So if you look at the first one, I have a 2 by 2 and a 2 by 2. If I add the corresponding elements, 3 plus negative 1 is 2. 0 plus 4 is 4. Negative 5 plus 2 is negative 3. Negative 1 plus 0 is negative 1. The next one, since I'm subtracting, I'm going to go ahead, switch the subtraction to addition, and then change all of these signs. So 7 plus 2 would give me 9. 4 plus negative 5 is negative 1. 0 plus negative 3 is negative 3. Negative 2 plus 10 is 8. Negative 1 plus 3 is 2. And then 6 plus negative 1 is 5. And I am done. Now example 3, if I look here, this is a 4 by 1 matrix, and this is a 1 by 3 matrix. Here, you cannot add because they are different dimensions. Okay, so keep that in mind. The next thing we're going to do is scalar multiply. In matrix algebra, a real number is often called a scalar, right? To multiply a matrix by a scalar, you multiply each element in the matrix by the scalar, and this is called scalar multiplication. So right now, this here is your scalar, and you're basically just going to go ahead and distribute that negative 2 to each term in here. And when you distribute, you're basically multiplying. So negative 2 times 4 is negative 8. Negative 2 times negative 1 is positive 2. Negative 2 times 1 is negative 2. Negative 2 times 0 is 0. Negative 2 times 2 is negative 4. Negative 2 times 7 is negative 14. And right away, we are done. Okay, now example 2, right? Here we have to scalar multiply and then add or subtract. You have to remember with this that you're doing the order of operations like you would in algebra in general. You're basically doing all multiplication or division and then addition or subtraction. So we're going to get our new matrix here by doing the scalar multiplication of 4. So 4 times negative 2 is negative 8. 4 times negative 8 is negative 32. 4 times 5 is 20. 4 times 0 is 0. That gives me a new 2 by 2 matrix, and now I can add it to this matrix here. And when I do that, negative 8 plus negative 3 is negative 11. Negative 32 plus 8 is negative 24. 20 plus 6 is 28. And 0 plus negative 5 is negative 5. All right, so do me a favor, take the time to do the homework and upload your answers. And if you have any questions, please feel free to contact me.